Good morning, judges. My name is Jessica Rogers. Today, I am presenting you how to make a flare. A flare is a 45-degree angle at the end of copper tubing, as you can see here. The difference, how you know, is when you have a good flare and a bad flare, is a good flare will be on a 45-degree angle with no cracks or dents or bends. This one is a bad flare. It's on a 45-degree angle, yes, but if you look, there are cracks. The proper tools that I will use to make a flare is a copper tubing dreamer, which is right here. I will also need a flat file, a yoke, refrigeration oil, flaring block, a piece of scrap copper tubing. I'll be using 3/8. I will also be using a 3/8 union and a 3/8 flare nut. But before I can begin my flaring, I have to make sure I have the right proper safety measures. I have my safety glasses on, steel-toe boots, no frayed, ripped, or holey jeans, either a collared shirt tucked in or an unhooded sweatshirt. And also no rings, no jewelry. You can wear one pair of studded earrings. Now that I'm in the right safety attire, I can now begin to flare. I begin flaring by taking my flaring block and looking for the 3/8 on it. I then take my copper tubing and put it in. I want to do it about the height of a nickel. However, you can do a little less or a little more, but the height of a nickel is where you would like to start. You then close and lock your copper tubing in place so that your copper tubing does not move and ruin the flare. You then take your reamer and you ream out the tubing. You ream it out so that it's easier to flare. After you know that you've reamed it out very well, you then take your yoke and you want to put the yoke's tip in the middle of the copper tubing. You then want to lock it in place so that the yoke doesn't move. You then grab your refrigeration oil and put it between the yoke and the flaring block, just a little bit, like that. You then go clockwise and counterclockwise, but you cannot go clockwise anymore. Now that I cannot go anymore, I now undo the yoke and take out my copper tubing. I then take my copper tubing and grab my flat file and I start filing off the burrs. Now that I look, and yes, I'm on a 45-degree angle. But another way I can check to make sure that my flare is good, if you look inside, I take my flare nut, and if you look inside a flare nut, there's a 45-degree angle that this angle will sit on. And if it covers about 3/4 to all of the angle that this will lay on, you know you have a good flare. Or you can take your union and put it together like this. And if it covers about 3/4 to all of it, you also have a good flare. And how you would find a flare on a project this is how you would find a flare. You would use a flare on a project to, you'd use a flare so that where fire is not permitted. If you're working with a bunch of wires and you need to do a connection, a leak-free connection, you would use a flare so that you don't burn the wires and hurt yourself. And another way is so that if someone is constantly working in an area, that they can, instead of always cutting it and swedging and using fire, they can just swedge. Because all you do is just tighten it and untighten it. Now that that's done, come over here and do my recap. Okay, the recap of flare. I went over what a flare is. It's a 45-degree angle at the end of a piece of tubing. I also went over the difference between a good and bad flare. I also went over the materials that I will be using. And I also went over the safety. And I also mentioned where you would find a flare. Thank you, and have a good day.